prior to that, when classes weren't running in person, would not make much sense, because the classes that they would need to attend and need support, at the time, I believe that you were asking, no general education students were coming in. We do want to continue to provide a lot of support for our 504 students, our IEP students, all of our students. And as we are building in student support time, increasing the amount of in-person instruction, looking at what our Wednesdays look like, we do need to continue to reach out to the students, so that our secondary administrators and teams are reaching out to students and families that are struggling, and we're attempting to put as much support in place as we can.
Just a note to Crystal. This plan is by no way admitted, I don't think by anyone, a good or the best plan out there. I have a student with an IEP, a 504, gets 10 minutes of pullout time when in school. I struggle to find out why it's even a waste of everyone's time for 10 minutes. By the time they get together, open the books, what are we going to work on, what's the problem, what's the struggle? So I admit, there's a lot of fault with it. Is it perfection by any means? No, not at all. There are a lot of people, a lot of kids that are getting affected by this. So I point that out merely to say that we have kids that are getting screwed out of this as well, okay? I don't want you to think that our kids get priority, or, you know, this plan works for us as well. It's affecting absolutely everybody, okay?
Thank you, I appreciate that. All right, next question, I think we already answered, but I will ask it for the record. Why can't you look at kids' performance in class on their Master Connect report cards and do an assessment comparing this year and last year with how they are doing in school in regard to remote learning with their grades? So I think that was asked and answered by Mrs. Swanson. I'm going to add on here that part of what this has allowed for us to do when we have town halls is to provide an opportunity to share how this branch of governance works and where the separation is between our administration and our board. So generally speaking, the school board wouldn't decide on how to look at data regarding report cards and assessments and compare them, because that's what we hired Dr. Sparlin to give him the direction on where, as a board, we agree to go, and he will then assign out to his leadership team the way that that will happen. So I just wanted to kind of point that part out so that it's a moment that we can learn from, since we have you here as our audience, which we're delighted to have.
I would also caution using last year's data, because remember, it was March of last year when
Right.
everything shut down.
Yeah.
So even your,
It's probably 2 years
Yeah.
old. Faith, we
Yeah,
had talked
yeah.
about this recently. Was it about 2 years ago?
For state assessments?
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
Because that's part of the issue, that with this requirement to have state assessments in grades 3 through, and please let me know if I'm missing one, they do change, but 3 to 8, and science at 5th and 8th,
And
and
junior year,
and then what other state assessments levels do they check?
SAT.
And the SAT.
SAT?
Also
So
junior year.
these
And
have all been
kids
required
at
to be in
kindergarten
person?
and access for English learners at all levels.
Yeah. So right now, we have to do this in person, yeah? And we
Yes.
had been talking about when this would happen, who would be deciding this? Would this be a federal decision? Would it be, would this be a state decision? And will there be a waiver process? Would we qualify for the waiver process? At this point, what percentage roughly of our 18,000 students do we have that have not yet been in a building that are in Group C? Do you know about, that would not be able to take this test?
It differs by level. We
Yeah.
have more of our students that have come in at the elementary level than have come in at the high school level, and junior high falls in between those two groups. So for instance, right now at our junior highs, we have 61% of our students coming in person. So you've got 39% that have not, the majority of those students have not come in yet for this school year. So when we are needing to take the state assessments, those students would have the opportunity to come in, but I'm guessing that they will choose not to.
So do we have any idea if And maybe, well, I'll save that question because it's not actually part of this, and I want to go through these. But that just made me think of the question. Okay, so the next one is, have you considered revamping the summer school program to provide more daily and weekly feedback to parents about how the kids are performing in summer school, and perhaps weekly or daily emails as to how the kids are performing? I enrolled my kid in summer school once, and I didn't get anything brought home until the very last day of summer school. We received a report card, and it seemed to be more of a daycare program, and I got academic help from Sylvan tutoring or in individual tutoring. So the question here is, the question on, are we doing a summer school program? Will that be revamped to provide more feedback to parents and how they're performing?
Yes, we're looking at greatly expanding our summer school and to be more academic and less field trip types of things, especially at the elementary level, expanding it to include close to 2,000 students with much of the focus being on reading, writing, and social emotional skills, and math.
Anyone
But
else?
I
wanna
think it's a
jump in?
really good time to remind teachers, because this is the bane of my existence with my 8th grader. What is in the Google Classroom doesn't always get put in the Tyler system.
This
And then
is
it's 3
very
weeks later,
true.
and I'm looking at his grades, and he did have an A or a B, and all of a sudden, he's got a D or an F because he didn't do 4 assignments, but I didn't see those assignments because I can access Tyler, not Google. I mean, I'm sure I could make him pull
No,
it
that's
up.
the Sunday
but-
night argument in our house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So I think it's a good time to remind our staff that it would be really lovely if they could up those regularly. And thank you for those of you who do. I appreciate you.
Anyone else want to weigh in there on summer school?
You just got to introduce yourself at the microphone.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
She had her hand up.
I'm so sorry. I can't see very far in.
Yeah,
Go
you're
ahead.
good.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
I just
Michelle?
can't, there's lights right here, and sometimes I am reading and can't see at the same time.
Sorry.
'Cause-
Michelle Klein. Question with summer school. My son has failed last semester, this semester. So how is he able to catch up over a shortened summer school schedule? Like, I don't understand how this is going to work for him.
That's why we have here the professionals who can answer that.
So it will depend on the number of courses or what that would look like. We have offered in the past and will continue to offer credit recovery types of courses. I don't know if those will meet the specific needs. It may be beneficial for you to call me or Heather Kincaid or even the high school administration so we can talk through about your specific needs.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
I think that brings up a really, really good point that I just want to make sure I've put out there on the record, which is that all of our administrators, they really want our kids to do well, not because they get any more money, they don't. They get to have the satisfaction of a job well done. When you get to a level of administration like this, the fact that we want to still know from your students is a really important thing. This isn't, it stops at your teacher, it stops at your administrator, it stops at your building principal. This goes all the way to Dr. Sparlin, who still checks in with people as well. And I just want to make sure that people are aware that the people who know your student best really do want to help. And if they're still struggling to find some support to be able to help, we have a lot of methods that we can implement for them that our administrators have created to be able to more individually pick out each one. But it's really hard for 18,000 kids to kind of blanket say what will work for yours would be what works for 18,000, you know? Yeah, that's all I wanted to add. Anyone else?
You got to just come up and say your
Yep,
name.
go ahead.
Sorry, Crystal Casper again. I know for a fact that my son is behind. He's a freshman. Are you guys going to test the kids at the end of the school year to see if they need summer school?
That is also a good question. Mrs. Dahlquist, I believe you first had started looking into that recently.
Sure. So we have a committee that we've been putting together to look at that. We don't want to take a whole lot of time away from instruction to do the assessments, especially with the state coming in. So we're trying to find that right balance between looking at assessments to identify those students and taking away instructional time to do that. So we have a committee that's looking at those pieces. Some of it at the secondary level may be off of grades and teacher and parent recommendations.
Since you have a high school kid too, you need to take a look at the graduation requirements. So you need, like, for instance, you need 2 years of science, you need 3 years of math, you need 4 years of language arts. So as you're kind of going through and looking at it, and when you're looking at it with maybe his counselor, maybe sit down and talk about, you know, I know that I need to make up a credit of science, I know that I need to make up.
Well, he doesn't need to make up anything. I just know that he's very behind. He had to be put into that literacy dynamics class this semester because he's very behind in English, and I was just wondering if they're gonna test him, because, I mean, these kids have been through so much. I don't think sending them to summer school is even an option. They need to enjoy the summer, go on vacations, you know, spend time with their family. I mean, they're just so stressed out right now, and I think throwing them into summer school is just, it shouldn't even be an option, but.
To be honest, I am going to say I hope that it doesn't become a requirement. I know that that's one of the considerations at the state level had been that they require mandatory summer school for all students, and at our local level, that does not feel like that's going to be the best fit for 18,000 kids any more than anything else. Because for some kids, what you're saying, absolutely true. For other kids, their families are sitting somewhere saying, oh my gosh, we need to have summer school. So one of the things that I really liked about how the culture here has changed is to, instead of going just from one test, which can indicate a bad day, or a kid who doesn't test well, we're using them, have parent recommendations, teacher recommendations, and assessments to figure out how to address the needs a little bit more specifically. I think that that's pretty much, I'm capturing what I've heard you say. I'm really just sharing the knowledge that they've earned, but.
And can I add?
Please.
You know, in addition to looking at, you know, or enhanced summer school options for this year to address the concerns and some of the learning loss that we're worried about for our kids, you know, a lot of planning is going in right now to how we start the year strong, next year, strong for our students, knowing that we, you know, want to take some time to see where kids are at, catch them up as best we can, and address any deficits that we might see. But there is, you know, a lot of work and a lot of thought and a lot of planning happening already for, of course, the beginning of next year. I know, or for next year. I know I heard that come up a number of times. That work is being done, and and it looks very different than it has in years past. Understanding and acknowledging that we're going to be, and our students are going to be potentially in a different place than we would expect them to be had this been a normal year. So that, I know, is some committee work. That is, you know, our teaching and learning department is, you know, actively thinking about that and working on what that will look like for our students.
Thank you.
All right, I just have two more in writing, and if we have time before 9, I'm happy to encourage more folks to come ask questions, as long as we're continuing to have answers or be able to say, I don't know, I think we can get somewhere. What is the percentage of kids per class that are struggling, crying, and running away with remote learning? Have you considered collecting some data on that, because it seems very high? So one of the things, I'm gonna leave this to Dr. Sparlin for the specifics, but one of the things that I can say on this is that, considering that students have privacy rights, some of this stuff, and sometimes it's how sick are kids, or who transmitted what to who, sometimes that's not shared publicly because students do retain privacy rights, and we're just not allowed to share it. It doesn't mean that it's not known by the people that are required to know it. It just means same things like this, the crying and running away. I don't know that we would share if students.
Yeah, I don't know if you can say how many kids are crying and running
yeah.
away. Because it depends on the day. I'm sure some of you who are here know I teach remotely. Depends on the day. One day some kid will cry. Some days nobody cries, everybody's fine. So I think that would be very hard data to come up with as a district, no matter how hard you tried. You'd have to have somebody observing while the teacher's trying to teach to count how many kids are crying or running away. So I don't know that that's a statistic we can gather.
Dr. Sparling, care to comment?
I was just going to add on the percent of students who are struggling in the classes. I think it's already been said, but we obviously track the kids who are not obtaining a C or better in class. The building administrators are working with their teachers and administration at each of the buildings to track that. We know how we compare from this year to last year. Are there more kids that had D's and F's? Yes, there are. And we've also put in the different interventions at the different schools to help help identify those kids and then provide the interventions for those students who need it.
And that's one of the most important pieces, I think, that I have been listening to also, is the piece about the extra student support time. And I've heard different teachers at different levels using it in different ways, just based on which students need what. But I've seen our teachers come up with some pretty spectacular solutions for individual issues, and I know that they're wanting to. But again, yeah, that's what we have to know to be able to make good decisions. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
Well, I think as it's been addressed, it would be hard to get, very difficult to get hard data, concrete data on this. But what I hear in the question is that we know kids are struggling. We know that this is not easy for many kids, and for some kids it's going okay. But we know that there are kids that are struggling. We know kids that are not thriving, and we know families that, have these struggles. So again, I don't know that we have a percentage other than, monitoring, of course, and how students are doing based on assessments, Mastery Connect, and their grades and whatnot. But everybody understands that this is not an ideal circumstances for many, many students.
It's a really nice time to plug in-person learning.
Say that one more time.
I cannot hear you.
It's a really nice time to plug in-person learning. I've been teaching physics in the classroom, and I haven't had anybody go out crying.
You haven't had anyone
I haven't had anybody leave crying yet.
You hadn't
You have
had
high
anyone
school,
crying
Ellie.
from
You
in-person
have high
learning.
school students.
Duly noted.
Try the 7 and 8 year olds, but I think Heather's right, and what we have to hold is the fact with all of us here that some students do better on remote, some students do the same, and some students do worse, and it's going to be interesting to see how the data rolls out, but I don't think any of you guys care about the data in general. You care about your own children and your own children's progress, and I think you have to look at a package of things for their mental health, for their learning, and for their relationship with you, because all of those things matter, and that's what I think you guys are here tonight, the people that came to speak, are trying to balance, and that's not going to be easy. So it's an individual situation is what it is.
The final email question, another question I had is, why can't you just have the kids go home for lunch and return to school if that would minimize the whole in-person school lunch reason for not doing a full day of school? I actually have had this question myself, and I don't know that I would do justice to the answer. There were several components related to student safety and reduction of in-person time, instructional time when in person, to do drop-off and pick-up in the middle of the day.
Right, I don't know if the person is talking about elementary, junior high, or high school. With elementary, running the buses to run everybody home for lunch and then run them back would be problematic, and we do have lots of people that depend on bus transportation to do that. Also, to just take the hour for some families by the time you got home and then ate and then came back, it's problematic, very problematic to do that for some of our junior high and high school students, where the lunch period could be very short, at the most 40 minutes, to be able to get everybody out of the building, get
the bus
into their
ride.
cars, get those pieces, and then have everybody come back, I think would be problematic.
Okay, that's my last emailed one. I can't quite see what the clock is saying for me on time.
8:44.
8:41?
44.
44,
8:44,
okay,
yeah.
16 minutes. Absolutely, we have 16 minutes.
It's Jason Masinko again. Thank you so much again. So sorry that you guys have to be on the board for the pandemic. It must be a nightmare. Will somebody from the
No,
board?
there was no comment on that.
Will somebody from the board please comment on why or why not an attendance strike on remote learning days would have any effect? Because we're desperate for leverage to get the kids back in school. And I hear about the guidelines and the mandates and whatnot, but I would like to remind you that you are elected officials and these aren't laws, they're mandates, and you're elected to serve us. So how would an attendance strike on remote learning days, specifically for my family, Wednesdays, affect the school district? How would it make leverage on you guys?
No, I understand what you're trying to get at there. I can tell you right now, I think attendance is already way down on Wednesdays. That's anecdotal, knowing that I also get those letters on Wednesdays sometimes. Sometimes it's technical error. Sometimes it's that I choose that for my child's well-being, they need a day off of the screen. Sometimes it's that my child has been fooling me. All of these things happen with a good kid.
Sure.
So I anticipate that this is probably happening across our district. In terms of funding, it doesn't affect funding. We're hold harmless. It doesn't affect, we have students enrolled. We're required to have your student enrolled. Truancy affects your family, I think, more than it would affect the school.
Truancy does affect the family. I took a call from a truancy officer in the middle of a grocery store who I had already left multiple messages for, only for her to start talking like a robot and talking down to me.
I'm very sorry
And
that
only a
happened.
few hours that I had with my child gone to do grocery shopping. But yeah, it's disappointing. We're desperate for leverage. Our tax dollars evidently don't speak enough in the 70% of us that are here wanting in-person school, reminding you that you are obligated to your constituency, not to the State Board of Uneducated, unelected officials. Okay? We're a constituency.
Mr. Masenko,
We're a
if you could stay.
constituency, and
What's your
they
question?
are not elected. So can we acknowledge that the people making these mandates are unelected and dictating from the state in a mob mentality, forcing you to make decisions that go against what we want?
Well, so,
It's like thug mentality.
so.
They bring these mandates,
Right.
and then they basically threaten you and say, you're going to do what the state wants, despite what your constituency wants.
Mr. Masenko, let me, there's a lot to parcel out here, and we want to do it justice.
Sure.
So
I got a little speechy there, so I'll just walk.
you did get a little speech in there. Good on ya. But I think the question there being, our Illinois State Board of Education, they are selected how?
They're elected by teachers,
They're elected by teachers,
aren't they?
No, the state board is appointed by the governor.
appointments.
Well, there you
So
go.
these are
Contact your governor.
professionals that have also spent their life in education. I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty sure they've never had a pandemic before either. This is new for every single person. I went back at one point to try to find an article that could give me some idea of what this will do to our kids. And I read an article from 1918 in New York City when they shut the schools down, the public schools down for a year due to polio. And they found that back in 1918, students ended up losing about 7 months after graduation, unless at 12 years old they went to work full-time because their families decided it was better for them to work than get to school. I'm not sure if that's a comment on the public education of 1918 or on the resilience of childhood, so it's really very irrelevant is the kind of the point. The State Board of Education creates guidelines not to harm kids. They're doing this, and what they presented to us last summer is what they felt at that time was the best that they could provide as guidance to 852 local school districts with what little we knew at that time, and that evolves. The bigger the system, the slower it moves. We all kind of know the sense of scale that changes when you become a state governing body. A lot of the personal, individual needs of each children have to be considered as part of the whole. So while 70% of the people in this room, as you'd mentioned, might feel very strongly that you want 5 days of education, when you look at our entire district of 18,000, that number shifts. You know what I mean? So one of the things that as...
Survey out to the public wants in-school learning. Now you're...
Well, some members of the public want it. That's what I'm trying to say. So some members of the public want in-school learning. Some members of the public are fearful because at home...
The majority of the...
Sir, if you'd like to speak and ask a question, you're welcome to come to the microphone. Otherwise, we're going to try to keep this a little bit in order here so that we can try to ask questions.
Can I address
Please.
part of Mr. Masenko?
Yeah, we're still on Mr. Masenko's question as well.
So the key word, and I've struggled this in my time on the board, is why can't we? Why not? And that word that you mentioned is mandate. The state mandates it. You have a State Board of Education that's appointed. They mandate things. There's guidance, but there's mandates. Our legislature meets and they have mandates. They vote and they say, you have to do this or else you don't get your funding. You don't have money to do that. So I know the issue right now is a hot button with going back to school and COVID, but pay attention. I know a couple of you had made comment before this started that, hey, this really got us paying attention to the school board. Mm-hmm. This really got us watching meetings and what's going on. Mm-hmm. Once we go back to school in the fall, don't stop watching. Call your state reps, call your state senators. Watch what they're voting in, watch what they're mandating us to do. And many of them, let's call it what it is, the unfunded mandates, which falls into the whole financial picture as well. So yeah, that word is a big word. So don't lose sight of that word once we're back in school. Keep watching and keep paying attention to what's going on, please.
Can I give a teacher perspective on this district-wide strike on Wednesdays? So when you say district-wide strike on Wednesdays, I have two questions. And my first is, as a high school teacher, I give my kids things to do when they're not with me. And for us, for us right now, it's Friday, we're going to 5 days. But, so if your child doesn't have something to do, that's something that we also need to know. Mm-hmm. Because Wednesdays should not just be get up, take attendance, answer one question, go to bed. Or, in my kids' case, play.
Well, and that's also a very individual experience. So for raising hands and trying, I've seen 4 hands up now, and we are at 8 minutes to go. So I'm going to try to honor this in the order in which you asked. Mr. Masenko, do you feel that your question has been adequately answered, although maybe not the answer you're hoping for?
Absolutely, I'm a very reasonable person.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. I appreciate
We appreciate you being reasonable.
All right, so then the gentleman who,
Jason was standing up?
was that who is that?
I believe, we just
I don't know,
met before.
it
Is
was
it
the
Jason?
gentleman with the hat.
Yeah.
That's what I can kind of see from here, and a mask, so. And a coat.
I just wonder, you guys put out a survey to the public, and to your point, Lori?
Yeah.
You said that, I guess, that the majority of the public didn't want in-school learning. That's not true. I saw the results of that public. So I guess what we're...
Well, I'm not trying to be untrue, so maybe there's just something that I'm miscommunicating about what my intention is. So let me see if I can clarify. So here's what it is.
Do you want in-school learning or do you not?
What's that now?
Do you want in-school learning or do you not?
I have my daughter in school learning. She needs it.
Okay.
So,
And I don't understand what the problem is for advocating for in-school learning and trying to say, hey, this is what I want. This is what my daughter's in. We have gone ahead and sent out a survey to our taxpayers who are the employers of the school district, if I'm not correct. Because if they don't pay their taxes, nobody gets paid. right? So you sent out this report to the majority of, of the people. Majority of the people have spoken and said, hey, look, we want to go ahead and have in-school learning.
If only that were true. So here's what that survey said. Faith, do you remember when we sent the survey out, what was the specific question? Because I think you're going to find this very fascinating. I found it fascinating because I felt like this should be a cut and dry answer. Either you want to go or you don't. Is it a black and white issue on if you want to go, Faith?
No, there are different parameters about I want to go, but only if it's 6 foot social distancing, or I want to go, but I only want it, if it's all in person, I only want to go if it's somewhat hybrid. There are many different gradients of what people want from in-person instruction.
So while the one end is saying, we'd like to go 5 full days, and there is another end that says, I don't want to go at all, for whatever reason, there's this
Social
whole
distancing.
middle section.
How can Yorkville pull off their in-school learning, but we can't here?
That is my favorite question. We get asked that a lot. Dr. Sperlin, I'm going to let you take this one, because I know I've
We have
asked
more
you a lot.
resources, we have more tax money.
Well, let's let Dr. Sperlin, he's the expert, so I would happily let him answer.
They decided on one model at the beginning of the year, and, there's a reason why all the large school districts in the state are decided on the same models that we have. They've all, I have a list here of all the districts, what they're doing, what they're going to be doing, and, the plans that we have presented this evening that the board will make some decisions on coincide, and if not, have more in-person learning opportunities than much of what the large districts in the area are providing as well. But there's a reason why some the different districts made different choices, and Yorkville, they made a choice, and things have worked out for them, and I'm very happy for that.
What is the reason that there was a different choice? I think that comes to speak at and I got you, sir. There's one lady over there, and then you're next, and then those are going to be the last two because we're at 8:56. What is the reason that we chose to go this way back in July and August, where we chose to go starting remote? I think that that's really what, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's the basic question here. Why are we doing this?
We were going off the information that we had at the time, based on throughout this entire pandemic, we have received different information, whether it's be the IDPH, the CDC, the Illinois State Board of Education, conflicting information that changes on a daily basis from different organizations. Just as somebody just mentioned that there was CDC information that came out last weekend. I spent the entire weekend working on that with our attorney in regards to what is this exactly saying, because I had hundreds of people reaching out and saying, you know what, you have to have 6 foot distancing. This is what this document says. If you fall in this category, this is what you must have. And we've mentioned it today, it's guidance. But we've also learned a lot from this pandemic throughout this past year, and this is where we're at. We made the decision on January 2nd when I sent that information to the parents, letting everyone know that we would be returning in person. Believe me, I got a lot of emails saying, "How can you make that decision now? The metrics are this and this, that, and the other." When we made the decision to phase it in, to ensure that we would be successful as we currently are. And tonight we're talking about what that next phase looks like.
Right. Did Yorkville receive different?
If you want to, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask for you to limit the follow-up just so that we get those last two people, but if you have a quick.
Just really quick, did Yorkville receive different information than Oswego?
It's a different size and scope of scale is what my understanding is.
I was gonna redirect because I don't think the question's been answered
Okay.
completely. I think the question is, what decision did Yorkville make that was different than ours? Can we answer that?
They decided to prioritize in-person over the social distancing, or perhaps, I don't know their square footage, perhaps they were able to maintain social distancing with the percentage of students choosing in person?
I think that if you want to know more about Yorkville, you should talk to all the people that work there. I work in Yorkville. I think some of you know that, and it is not the rose garden you think it is. You're welcome to think that if you choose that. I know from talking to the people that I talk to that it is just as harried and just as difficult as it is here. And I know lots of people like to portray it as that was so easy for them. No, it was not. And it's still not easy. And it's not easy on the kids. And there are some kids that are having big problems. But What I think matters in any of these situations is the maturity that you show when you talk to your kids. I've spent 30 years in education, and I've seen parents that have situations that are hideous, and somehow they guide their children through, and their children do okay. And it's not just COVID. That's not the only problem people have. People have serious issues. But some parents choose to have a positive attitude. Some parents choose to be proactive. Some parents choose to be helpful and do what they can to shore up whatever they can shore up. And you don't have everything in your control, but you do the best you can. And that's the attitude that I would highly promote as a teacher and as a board member to anyone who needs to know what to do in a time of difficulty. And that's, I don't know that we should ask Dr. Sparlin to answer the question, how did we choose this? When I was in August, honestly, I was choosing the safety of people because the highest priority for me was everybody's got to live that can possibly live. And if you want to make that decision, you run for board. And then you can sit here and you can decide whether you're going to let people maybe die or maybe live. And it's not as easy.
Tony, so in the interest of the fact that it's 9 o'clock and I have allowed two more questions.
This is what I'm going to say. You can laugh at that, but I am very glad that you're at a meeting now.
Hold on, in all fairness,
where you can
guys
have
got to
time
speak to.
to second guess everything. I am glad you're here to second guess. I am. I'm actually thankful. Because that means that everybody got to a safe place and now you get to be the, Monday morning quarterbacks.
So thank you for the response. If we can all please retain some good role modeling, all of us would be much appreciated as we move to our last two questions. The woman, I think it's a mottled gray and white sweatshirt. Next, yeah, that's you. Yay! I think I called it right. I hope so. How can we answer a question for you?
Hi, so I'm hearing tonight that, social distancing guidelines of 6 feet are what's dictating some decisions here tonight. Well, not tonight, but decisions that have been made are based off of the 6 feet social distancing, the masking, and how can we make schools safe. I am looking at a picture right now on Facebook of cheerleaders in the high school with their heads inches from each other. I'm not going to name names. I don't know who's in this picture. It's very blurry. So I'm not saying who they are. That doesn't matter. I want to know why it's okay for our students to be head to head in a cheerleading practice, our football players allowed to play football, our basketball students playing basketball.
So the question is, the difference is?
Our kids cannot go to school to learn and be emotionally and physically and socially safe 5 days a week.
Totally understand the frustration.
When this is happening, yes.
So
I'm
just to continue some progress. So I totally understand your frustration. I'm seeing this as an extreme frustration with the fact that we do offer sports that are occurring, that social distancing does not always take place in those sports. In fact, IHSA considers some of these medium and high-risk activities. Dr. Sparlin, or I'm not sure if we have a more athletic
So my
type
question is,
person
why
to
is it
answer that?
dangerous, not dangerous in that setting, but it's dangerous 5 days a week in the school setting? Someone please explain to me why it's
There's
not
a waiver.
dangerous.
The short answer is there's a waiver. Parents signed to participate
Then I
in
will
this.
sign a waiver for my kids to go to school. We will
Are
sign
we
any
allowed?
kind of waiver
Okay,
that you
please.
want.
We've been doing a real good job, folks, trying to answer questions and facilitate some good dialogue here, because this is a passionate subject, not just for those of you sitting in the audience. It's a passionate subject for every educator. It's a passionate subject for every board member. We volunteered for this, guys, and we didn't quit. We care about this stuff.
My
So
frustrations
all
are
I ask
directed
in
at you.
return is to just remember that the goal is for us to be able to help bridge some understanding, not to try to facilitate more disagreements. So if the question is regarding the difference between why you can do this in sports and why you can't do this for school, there's a person who can definitely answer it, but we have to just let him give that a shot.
Absolutely.
You might not like the answer. I don't know that I like the answer, but there is an answer.
Okay.
We follow the guidelines from IHSA in regards to sports. As you saw, there was a lot of controversy regarding that. The sports are delineated by high, medium, and low-risk sports. Sports are a choice, as Mrs. Doyle just said, and people have that choice. And school, you don't have that choice. You have to be here.
Yeah, so we want to be here, we want to be in school, but we're being told it's not safe. So you're taking the guidelines from the Sports Association and saying it's okay for sports.
They're different guidelines.
I understand, but do you see the comparison I'm making here? We have
It totally makes sense
I
that
do
there's not
understand.
the same guidelines.
face to
Totally
face.
agree.
Right.
It makes no sense
But
that they have different guidelines. They do. Those are voluntary for staff. They are voluntary for students. They're not required, and staff are not required to coach them as part of their job responsibilities. Like I said, I didn't think that there would be an answer that would make anybody feel better, but that's what the answer is. I mean, there are just different guidelines of what you can do. And in a district where we're trying to offer as many opportunities to children as it is safe to do, by the standards that we are required to hold. And remember, the guidelines for schools, way stricter than for any hospital. And that's not by local control. That is what we have to do to be able to get the $230 million a year that we need to be able to give kids teachers.
So we're
it's
concerned
just what
about
it
the
is.
safety of children while they're in school, but we're not concerned about the safety of the kids.
Oh, no, we're concerned.
When they're in sports.
Trust me, I'm concerned every day for the safety of children and whatever their
Then why are
parents
they
decide.
allowed? And I'm not advocating for taking away sports.
That's
I'm
not
advocating
my
that you
choice
use
to
the
make.
same metrics that you use for school sports in school buildings, taxpayer-funded
So,
buildings. That you
we're at
use the same
9:06.
metrics and guidelines for the
Totally
kids while they're in
understand that
school
you-
5 days a week.
I totally understand that you'd like to have the same guidelines for both. I think that that's what I'm hearing from you, is that you'd like to have the same guidelines for sports and for school, and that you feel that because sports can participate in activities that don't have as much social distancing, that don't maybe have masking at some points if they're running or swimming, that if you can do that, then why can't you be in school 5 days a week? The answer is because the rules and the guidelines and the mandates are just different. There is I have no idea how IHSA works. I do know that they meet a lot, and eventually they make a decision on things. I know that they have been working with IDPH, because for a lot of families, sports are what keep their kids from dropping out.
Okay, I also understand
And
that-
for a lot of kids, the reason that they'll stay remote is so that they can not risk being quarantined for not being able to participate in sports, because that can happen too.
Okay, and I also understand that IDPH has released guidelines, but these are not mandates. Is that correct? Are you guys
They said the
mandated to follow the guidelines? Do you have a mandate?
Okay, so let me
That's my
ask you a
next
question back, and I'm going to make this the last one, and if you want to just give me an answer, then we're going to go to the last gentleman, because we're already 7 minutes beyond what we're allotted. So I'm going to ask you a question back. Do you feel that this board is purposely trying to keep your children in a harmful position?
Of course not.
There you go. We have the same frustrations. We have asked these same questions. These are frustrations and questions that have been asked pretty much by every parent across the country for a year. In fact, I was just thinking before we got here, I think the second to last in-person meeting we had was a public forum this time last year. And the topic on the table was a referendum and questions about financing and money and the things we needed. A year ago, one-to-one technology was not on our radar. We were not going to be able to do that for a real long time. It wasn't even close. That's how much things have changed in a year. A week later, we're talking about kids not being in school. So what we're trying to do is the same thing you're trying to do. We're trying to advocate for all the kids, just like you're trying to advocate for your kids.
Except for we've elected all of you to make what we want happen.
Well,
And
but
we
not
do it
what you
for our-
want. You've elected us to actually make decisions for the children's education of public education in this community. What you elected was, one, people that didn't know a pandemic was coming. Two, board members that are explicitly not allowed to cater to one specific special interest group. We are required to be
We're not a
objective
special
to
interest group. I
all
think that's unfair.
situations.
Okay, can we get that last question?
I think that's very unfair.
I'm sorry.
To call me a special interest group.
Well, I don't know.
Ms. Doyle, can we have
Yeah,
that last
absolutely.
question come up?
It's, what's the difference? I mean, it just depends. They're both.
It's a guideline, which is an unfunded mandate.
A guideline, which is an unfunded mandate?
Who was the last question?
The gentleman in the blue T-shirt. I knew it was blue, though, so that's good.
Just real quick, I have 6 nieces that go to the Pensacola School District. There are thousands more students there than our district. They've been in school since August, but that's not my question. My question
That's
is,
what that state chose.
That's their governor.
and so my question to you is what is the end game? I understand it costs money to offer remote and in-person. What is the end game? When do we tell the people in this district, when does it come that the pandemic is over and you will no longer have the choice to work from home or go to school at home, and we need to bring all the kids back to the classroom? I mean, have we started to think about that end game of when it's time to say?
The end game, I think, from day -1 has been how do you bring kids back to where we don't have to do remote? Oh, I wish I had an answer for that one. I think what we're talking about with regards to the requests that people that have come here tonight to speak about 5 full days in person is what we're looking at is the fall, first day of school next year. So for all intents and purposes, I guess my question is, at what point does it change from being able to get your students what they need to not wanting to have a remote option for other students when that's what they need? And that's something that we haven't gotten to yet because we don't know. Hopefully we will soon.
Thank you.
Sure.
I would follow that up by saying that it would be advantageous to put out a statement or figure out what that statement is that says, based on or until this statement is made by Kendall County, ISBE, Governor Pritzker, whoever's going to make that statement, what is that statement that says we are going in person on August 15th, 16th, 17th, whatever that date is? What does that look like? Because now it's like, well, that's our hope for the fall. But what is it that we have to hear, or what is it that the state of Illinois has to do that says, yep, 5 days a week, all day long, that's what school looks like again?
Right, but
That
be
as
careful,
a citizen,
because
that's what I would want to hear too.
We
It's
can't
like,
make
what's
that
what's
decision,
trigger
but
statement?
we do know that last summer, when the end of June arrived, we received the initial 67 pages of guidelines, mandates. You know, sometimes the words are a little bit interchangeable. It depends if money's involved or this, that, the other, and that's pretty much as far as I can tell what the difference really has been. However, there's also workers' comp involved, there's liability involved, there's a lot of legal issues that no one's ever had to deal with before. When we received that from the state last year, are we expecting to see something like that again this year that could help us be informed a little bit more as to when we are no longer required to follow any sort of mitigating efforts? Do you know what that looks like? Have we been given any indication yet?
No, we haven't given any indication regarding that yet, no.
but you could always reach out to all of your local and state representatives at any time, whether you want 5-day in person, or whether you want a remote option for next year. I think it's a good point that not only your school districts, because it's not just this school district dealing with that, right? It's every school district across many, many states.
We've been reaching out, don't worry.
I know you have.
At what point are you going to say we aren't?
Well, hang on one second. First, we've asked a whole bunch of questions. We followed up with the guy in the blue shirt. We can ask questions, you guys, for real. I don't know, but I think I could ask questions about this and the whys and the what ifs probably for the next 10 hours and not have answers that satisfy me. Dr. Sparling can do that and does do that and not have answers that satisfy him. There's a lot of unknown, and honestly, that's the biggest horror of this, besides the people that are getting hurt. The incidental thing happening is that there is so much unknown. Nobody has that kind of certainty of what's going to happen.
CDC says it's okay to open.
Well, this week, they do, as long as you can maintain masking and social distancing. You know, you can even see here that it's sometimes not possible to do that. We have different reasons, or glasses are fogging, or the masks, they slip and things like that. And there's social distancing involved, and there's different risks, whether you're 3, 5, 7, or 18.
I think that what I have heard several different times tonight is that our goal, the district's goal, is to return to 5 days of instruction in person, starting in the fall as best we can. Plans are being made. That is what we are planning on and hope to achieve. However, we will also be following the guidance, whenever it may come, from IDPH, ISBE, and all of this. I think that statement in and of itself, at this point, I don't know how we can make any other concrete statement come, the summer or fall. That's the goal. That's what we're doing and working our hardest on. How, in this ever-changing climate, how in the world can we guarantee you that where we'll be come the first day of school? I just don't know how to do that.
Right, can we move on?
So I'm pretty sure that we are over time. I hope that we all can recognize that there's a lot of the same concerns. We need to plan for next year. I need to know if I need to start saving money now for private school for my child. I totally get it. We have all made these decisions too. Nobody can help with that right now. There just isn't a way for the people sitting at this table to be able to say, I think that it's time for your student to do XYZ as the best. If I could, I would. I really wish that we could give you something more concrete. I know that we work on that every day. I know that all of the people that are sitting behind you work on that more hours than I think they've ever dreamed they knew how to work. And the goal is there. So this is what we can offer. And it's not going to be the right thing for everybody, but it's the best that we can do at this point. And we don't know if that will change. So moving forward, we have a few more things to cover this evening. One is board member comments. Shall we go around? We'll start. Ruth, do you have comments you'd like to share for the good of the order?
Sure. I don't have anything formally prepared or anything, but I just, we have all received a lot of emails over the past week, just like we have all year, that span the spectrum of opinions, and I appreciate every single one of them, every person who has reached out. I've tried really hard to at least respond in some way. I especially appreciate those that are respectful and thoughtful. I appreciate less the ones that are maybe not so nice, but I read them anyway. I've heard some of my fellow board members make comments, and I agree with them in saying that none of these plans is what we want to do, and none of these plans is what anybody wants to be doing. But we need to do something. I feel strongly that we need to continue to move forward. My oldest son is a senior, so talking about next year really doesn't do him any good. And I am concerned about him being ready for college, but I'm not here to make choices based on what I want to do for my own kids. I probably would make different choices if that's what I felt like my responsibility was. We're here to consider every student from pre-K through our life skills programs, and not just the students either. We have to think about our staff and the students' families as well. And I have really thought very hard about all of these different plans that were presented to us, that a tremendous amount of work has been put into. I appreciate the feedback that we've received from teachers and parents in regards to those plans. And I will be making decisions tonight based on, knowing that there are pros and cons to every plan, and there's a lot of cons to every single one of them. And I'm trying to, some things you can't just number, where do those weigh out? Because some cons are maybe worth more points than others, I guess. But I appreciate that we've been able to have constructive dialogue, and I'm glad that members of the community came out tonight, and I know that everyone's very frustrated. We're frustrated too. This is not what you signed up for. This is not what we signed up for. It's not what any of our teachers or administrators signed up for, and we're all just doing the best that we can and trying to communicate as best we can, because that is key. I think about my own students who are, you know, on paper, they're doing fine with remote learning. But every single one of them who has been able to go even just a couple of days in person commented to me how much better it was to be in the classroom, how things just clicked for them. Just because they're sitting in the room. You know, one of my sons, like, the teacher didn't even present new content, but I just got it today being in the classroom. And I think that that is important and impactful. And this is for a kid who, if you look at his grades, you wouldn't think that that was a problem for him, but it was important. And I think a lot of that is because since kindergarten, that's where they've learned. That's their learning environment. They've been conditioned to know this is where I learn. And I think that we should be proud of the fact that our students know that they can learn in the classroom, and that of course should be our ultimate goal, is to get these kids back in the classroom. That's all I have.
Well, a lot of what I'll say echoes what Ruth said. It's like we planned it, but we didn't. You know, I'm a board member. I'm a member of this community. I'm a parent. I have 2 kids in the district. I have a 6-year-old who is struggling majorly, and it's heartbreaking. It's hard to see her being left behind. It's difficult. So please know that I empathize with much of what you have said. Even if I didn't have a struggling student, I think I could really, you know, I hear the love and the care that you have and the desires that you have for your students. I just want to say that. Even, you know, so in my term on the board, I've tried to make decisions, and I've tried to vote in the best interest of all students within this community. Even while I know there are many people, many families, and many parents who, you know, don't agree with those decisions, who don't believe that these decisions may be coming down from the board, how I vote, is the best for their child. And you guys do know best. We do know what's best for our kids. And we're doing the very best that we can to vote our conscience, vote for what's right, again, for all students, not just our own. You know, I hear and understand and acknowledge and read these emails and understand the concerns are valid. They're real. All of these things are true, for sure. But again, you know, I'm just doing the very best that I can to look at the information that we're provided. A lot of information, a lot of research, a lot of data is given to us, is shared with us. We have to sift through it. We have to consider recommendations from, you know, our educational experts up here and make decisions the best we can. And I've tried in this time to make decisions that are based on, you know, health and safety guidelines and guidance of our students, and I've done the best that I can. I understand that really might be unsatisfactory for many of you. I do want to just mention we do have some plans, some things to vote on tonight, and I just want to say, I know many of us have said a number of times today and over the course of the year that we are not in love with the plans. These are not perfect plans. That's all true too. I want to be really careful though I just want to say that the amount of work that has gone into develop these plans and these options has been incredible. I truly believe that we have been given the best options at our disposal to choose from. And none of those options are perfect. We all know where we should be, which is in person, in school, safe. But so I don't want to, we've said a lot of things about the plan, and I think it's really important that we are not disparaging the work that went into it, that this is, again, I think a lot of good information and within the realm of what we can do, given the guidance that we have and given, the opportunities that we have, in our district. So I did just want to say that. So I appreciate the staff and administration for developing these plans. I appreciate the teachers. I know it's a hard job. I know it's such a hard job, especially with everything changing. So I appreciate the teachers that are out there implementing the plan, and that's all I have to say.
There's a lot to say. There's a lot that's been said this evening. There's unanswered questions that have been asked for the last several months, since the fall, since we tried to get back to school. Well, bottom line is that we as a board have, referred to them as guidelines, mandates that we have to follow. And that's a big part of it. We could say, okay, we're going to throw out all the guidelines. We're not going to do what is recommended by the boards that oversee us. And if something does go wrong, something does happen, it's on us. So we try to make those decisions for the good of the whole. We'll share personal experiences. I shared a negative experience with IEP pullout time. I also have the negative experience of that child being out on medical leave from last Christmas, who's been out almost, over a year and a half almost. So there is a need to get back in school, understand that, but the need to do it in a way that we are able to by following the protocols that are set forth to us. It's not a situation I think many of us want to be in. Unfortunately, we're a large community. We have 18,000 students where we spread over Wisconsin, oh my gosh, Oswego, Montgomery, portions of Joliet. I mean, we have a wide variety of people. And, thanks for coming out. This is a good response for forums that we've had in the past. There's forums that we've had where we've had 3 people come out and ask questions. So thank you for coming out and asking the questions. But we have received, oh my gosh, tons and tons of emails, and it is from every point of view, every perspective, from in class 5 days, full day, to remain hybrid, to almost every variation in between. So I think there may be a majority of people that say, yes, we would prefer to be in school, but as Faith said, it is in person in school with a number of different hybrid options that people would prefer. It's hard to follow, but we are trying to do our best. We want the best for our kids. You've heard that many of us have kids that need to be in school. That's where we know they thrive, that we know that's where they're going to succeed. That's what we want, but we have to work through what the state of Illinois is allowing us to work through at that pace, unfortunately.
I think you guys pretty much summed it up. I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to vote my heart, and my heart's in the classroom. You're up.
That's it?
Yeah, I mean, they already said it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, it's my turn.
Not yet.
Hold on.
Mr. Lightfoot would like to go.
Hold on.
Oh, I thought you said, I'm sorry, Brent, I misunderstood what you said.
So, look, I appreciate everybody's questions, everybody's statements tonight. For those of you that have listened to all of us speak before, you know that there are 7 different opinions up here, and that's an okay thing. Tonight, we're about to vote on making schools a little bit more open, a little bit more normal, but it's not what we want. I'll tell you, my viewpoint is that based on the plans we have before us tonight, I'd vote on none of the above. I want 5 days, 5 full days. But that's not an option, and that would not pass this board. I'm telling you, that's the reality of it. And everybody has their reasons for voting the way they do, and I don't criticize anybody for it. So understand tonight that what we vote for is kind of best of the worst, right? I have a different opinion than was kind of thrown out there earlier when I thought the great question came up about what does next fall look like? What does August 15th or 17th or whatever the day, what does it look like? And while yes, it is correct, we don't know what the limitations will be placed on us at that time by the state. I think we can be proactive, and I think we as a school district should say, as of March 1st, our plan is to open next school year with no remote option. Back to school, back to 2019. And that will be the plan until we are told by a specific entity or person that we can't do that. And if that happens, and I was talking with some teachers the other night, and it was great to get their feedback and their input, and they kind of asked me the same question. Well, where's the plan? Where's the plan for next year? Why don't we have the... I said, we have the plan. Tonight we're approving a phase 3 plan. We have a phase 2 plan. We already went through phase 1, right? So all we have to do is say, hey, we're opening next school year fully open. And I hope it happens. And if something can't happen, we've already approved what different plans look like. And I say that for a specific reason. One, we as a community need to understand what each kind of plan and level looks like, but what we can never answer is when, right? But I also say it for our wonderful folks in the administration that have worked so hard this year trying to develop these plans, take the feedback and the criticism that the board has provided, and try to curtail these plans that meet the needs that we're asking upon them and they are telling us is the best that we can do to provide education for the kids, because that's what we're here to do. So yeah, when we're at 2.06, if I wrote that down correctly, it's statewide positivity rate. I don't know why we're not back full time, but we're not. So, Tony?
It is really my turn now?
Yes, it is.
Sorry to interrupt you before, Brent. I really thought that you were just agreeing with Ally and then saying you. Okay. I have to say, honestly, if all of the people, most of the people who are here tonight had showed up last February, I would have been thrilled, because as a classroom teacher who's taught for a long time, and I'm not far from retirement, I had a lot of questions about whether technology was the direction we should be going, because I did believe in the social parts of teaching and in the personal parts of teaching and all of that. So it's great to hear a lot of people who believe in that, and I hope that when we do go to school in the fall, and my hope is that we go to school in the fall and we still accommodate most of the people who go to our schools, not just say this group, your needs are not important, or this group, your needs are not important, but we find a way to make it work for a variety of groups, and not excessive, because that's a logistical problem. But I now know that my viewpoint of technology versus in person has become a lot more nuanced. And that's not just because I teach remote, it's because I see what's going on with the kids in all these different situations. And you guys bring up very important points about mental health, about how do you get kids to not feel zombie-like sitting in front of a screen all the time. If we get beyond this in another year, I hope we don't forget all the lessons we learned. I hope we don't forget that, because there was a time we were pushing up to an education where we were just doing that. We were saying, we'll just have the devices babysit the kids. We'll have the devices raise the kids. We'll have the devices take over, and that'll be that. And that was not a good plan. COVID gave us a chance to look at that and say, you know what? It is too much. It's too much time on screen. So I feel very badly that some people see it as a completely negative thing. I think there are a lot of lessons that have been learned. I think next year, if we offer a remote option, it could be a very strong option. And I am a person who's very much about logistics. One of the logistical issues with this year is once we started, people were placed in classes, and you would have had to undo all these classrooms to go 5 days a week. And that is really one of the logistical issues that has created what we're voting on tonight. Because you can't undo some of the things that you've already done for all this time. Unless you want to have a bunch more parents saying, I'm not going to let my child lose their teacher. I'm not going to have my child go to another classroom or another school or a different situation. So these are not easy choices when you get down to the people. And the last thing I want to say is I am thankful. I am thankful for parents who disagree. I am thankful for parents who are feisty, because I think you should be feisty for your children, and you should be outspoken, and you should think of every way that you can to try to advocate for them. But I'm also thankful for, I want to start here, secretaries at every school in this district. The secretaries are the hearts and brains of this district, and we all know that's true, but we pretend like other people are in charge. I want to thank the maintenance people and the custodians. Those people every day are doing things that make it better and healthier for the kids to go to school and to have a good day and to do what they need to do. I can't tell you how much work they do. The tech people, even though, like I said, tech has a cautious part of it for me. The tech people are helping so much, and there's so many questions from all the different people who are involved in using this technology, but thank goodness those people help. Teaching assistants, special ed, all the teachers, all the staff, all the administrators are doing everything they can. And as a board, I just want to say this. We sometimes as a board make it hard for everybody in the district, don't we? We make it hard for the parents because they don't get completely what they want. We make it hard for administrators because they feel like they have to say what we want to hear. We make it hard for teachers and other staff members who don't feel like they're heard at all. But none of those things is true. All of them are partially true. And it is a hard world right now. I'm on the board for another month and a half, and I hope that things can go well in the future, and I hope that things go really well in the fall. I know that I'll do what I can for kids always, but I think tonight you guys are good to come out. You're good to advocate for your kids. I agree with Ruth that I wish everyone were as civil as some of the people who write us, but in this particular situation with these plans, I'm going to vote based on practicalities. That's what I'm going to do.
So I think that leads me, Tony, thank you for that, to a good point to mention, which is that we are shortly going to be having a school board election. There are 4 board members up here who have served us for a good long time that have chosen not to run for re-election. Mrs. Moyer served us for 4 years. Mr. Baumann will be 8. Mr. Lightfoot will be 8, and Mrs. Morgan will be 4. And for the last 4 or 8 years, they have devoted the good of our district and all of the things that go along with it, sometimes over the needs of their own kids, because that's what we each volunteered to do. And so I want to thank each board member for their service. And although I understand completely why this would be a graceful time to move to the next chapter, I think that the experience that you have given to us and to our community has been very valuable. For the items tonight, I'm going to be very upfront about the fact that I do not, at this time, feel I can agree to move to a phase 3. And I'm going to just briefly explain my rationale, and it's not going to be the rationale that everyone else would use, but it's the rationale I'm using. I'm speaking on behalf of the families that just barely, by the grace of whatever situation they're in, have been able to make the decision to put their kids back in phase 2 when they couldn't in phase 1. The families that are in phase 2 now that would need to pull their kids out if the phase 3 went through because of family situations, because of other things. That's a big group of parents that we don't often talk about because it's real hard to quantify. It's hard to quantify if I would go now, but I wouldn't go then. At what point do we do this? I'm also choosing this on behalf of all of the individuals. We have 2,300 employees plus. We're the largest employer in the county, and we have employees that are so dedicated, and I am seeing that they are giving us 135,000% right now, and sometimes one more change is just too many. And it's not because they're not good at their job, it's not because they don't want what's best for kids, they do. But every time we make a change to plans, it doesn't just make a small change, it makes an enormous one, thinking of the unknowns. So for those groups, and I do agree, we do have representation of pretty much every end of the different areas that I've seen community fall in, not because I don't want kids in school, but because I do believe that sometimes stability has to be allowed to be given a chance. I cannot vote to move to a phase 3 for April 7th. So I just wanted to make sure that I've shared that. Action items. Item 6.1. May I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the elementary Phase 3 Plan A. No changes to the current plan.
Second.
Second.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Miss Morgan,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
No.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mr. Baumann,
Aye.
Mr. Lightfoot,
No.
Mrs. Moyer.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-2. Again, I misspoke. The no change plan I would be voting for. My apologies. Item 6.2, elementary phase 3 Plan B.
I make a motion to approve the elementary Phase 3 Plan B, move Wednesdays remote core instruction to mornings.
Second.
Mrs. Doyle,
No.
Mrs. Swanson,
No.
Mrs. Moyer,
No.
Miss Morgan,
No.
Mr. Baumann,
No.
Mrs. Croner,
No.
Mr. Lightfoot.
No.
Motion fails 0-7. Item 6.3.
I make a motion to approve the elementary Phase 3 Plan C to move in-person instruction on Wednesday mornings and live streaming for remote students.
Second.
Miss Morgan,
Aye.
Mr. Lightfoot,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner,
No.
Mr. Baumann,
No.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
No.
Mrs. Moyer.
No.
Motion fails 3-4. Item 6.4.
I make a motion to approve the secondary Phase 3 Plan A, combining A-B groups for 4 days, 5 hours in-person instruction.
Second.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Mr. Lightfoot,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Miss Morgan,
Aye.
Mrs. Moyer,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
No.
Mr. Baumann.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-1. Item 6.5.
I make a motion to approve the secondary Phase 3 Plan B, keep A-B groups and increase to full 2 days of in-person instruction.
Second.
Mr. Lightfoot,
No.
Miss Morgan,
No.
Mrs. Doyle,
No?
Mrs. Swanson? Nope. Mr. Baumann?
No.
Mrs. Moyer?
No.
Mrs. Croner?
Nope.
Motion fails 0-7. Final comments from the board. I know we just had them, and the orders changed a little bit, so I think unless anyone has anything finally that they would like to add. Seeing nobody wave or anything, I'm going to go ahead and say I'd like to request a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.